Thank each of you for joining us today. I call the May 8th, 2025 meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board to order. First, I'll have each member introduce themselves, starting on my left here.
Joanna Johnson.
Lucretia King.
Conrad Thomas.
And Dave Hoganson.
Great. The next item is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I will motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The next item is to approve the December 12th, 2024 minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is public comments. Those who wish to address the Oversight Board must use the sign-in sheet. Speakers must state their names and will be limited to 3 minutes. Comments should not contain profanity or personal attacks. Staff, do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
We just need to approve the brown bag minutes first, Conrad.
Oh, pardon me, yeah, I skipped that, yes. I'd like to get approval for the brown bag meeting that was held on January 15th. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. As mentioned, this is the public comments section. Do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
We have one, Christopher Cohn.
Yeah.
Yes, Christopher Cohn. I live here in Fargo, not far from downtown. And the issue I'd like to discuss today is dealing with drug dealers in apartment buildings. I live in a rental building, and unfortunately, my landlord is not really interested in addressing the problem. And the landlord has nothing to say about it other than referring me to the police department. And why? Because the police need evidence that can be used in court, my landlord says. I don't really know what exactly that means. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any training in that. I don't know what evidence would be useful to them or not. So I did contact the police this week and called the main line and inquired about this, and they told me I could use the tip line. You know, I have used the tip line in the past, quite a long time ago, and I don't remember exactly what they're looking for. And I think you can do it anonymously on your cell phone, if that's important to you. So I asked the person who answered the phone, but could you give me any advice on what information that they would like or need at the tip line? What does it have something to do with evidence that would hold up in court or not, or what would that be? Well, he said he didn't know that wasn't his area of expertise. I should talk to somebody, and I should call dispatch. So he transferred me to dispatch. They had a police officer call me back, and who did so, who really couldn't get me any closer to any understanding of what information would be needed. So I still don't know. I'm still entirely perplexed. I said I have noted a series of cars that this resident drives. I've gotten tag numbers off of them. I have make, models, colors of the cars. I have times of days this person is coming and going all times of night and day, making short driving trips away, sometimes often leaving with a small disposable bag and returning without the bag. So I'm not with, I still don't know anything. I don't know what information I should give to the tip line.
Thank you for bringing that up to the committee. The next item on our agenda will give each board members an opportunity to continue the discussion regarding the Oversight Board directions. From our brown bag meeting on January 15th, 2025, we discussed whether it would be more feasible to become a Citizens Advisory Board with the perks of not being held to the Roberts Rule or open records. Less formality and the possibility of more community participation, more discussion as issues are being brought up. There were also concerns, though, regarding the changes regarding accountability. How would the meeting be supervised, as well as organization structure, whether it be something like a president or vice president overall. So I don't know if any board members would like to continue this discussion, but.
Well, I think when we did talk about it, there were some benefits. A good example would be that Mr. Cohen just had a comment, and then we listen. Having a community board would allow us to engage in that conversation openly and be able to discuss maybe what do we tell the tip line? And maybe some answers can be resolved so I think the engagement part is still, I think, a positive part about it. Being able to engage in conversation and listen to community concerns. That's my-
Yeah, that was my takeaway from the chief too, is that really, I don't think he saw any downside to making it an informal board, but did point to the flexibility to be able to discuss something and without the formality. So I guess my takeaway was that the chief thought it was a good idea, if we thought it was a good idea. If I remember right, he was going to present the idea of doing away with the ordinance to the city commission, and I'm not sure where that stands.
Yeah, just for board knowledge, sounds like tentatively June 9th. They're going to be discussing kind of the, kind of all boards and all commissions citywide. Just the, kind of the future of those boards and commissions and, just where they'll go and if boards are going to be, dissolved or if they're going to stay. But that'll all happen tentatively on June 9th. Just for board awareness.
And if I remember too, we talked about that we'd have to develop our own structure,
Right.
to, guardrails, if you will.
Right, which I think we could do because we wouldn't be bound by quorum, where we could all actually sit together and have a conversation, and the community could be present too, but, we could actually talk about those details
Right,
as a group
right.
without worrying about quorum, because I think that's a big thing whenever we want to talk amongst each other, we have to limit that to, I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to
Yeah.
three of you at the same time.
Right, if I could just kind of join in that conversation, I was not at that brown bag meeting and kind of learned a little bit more about the discussion after. I would just say that anything we do, we would be looking to ensure compliance with open meeting laws. So as you're talking about just changing, there may be some complications with that. So before anything happens, it needs to be further explored to confirm compliance with open meeting laws.
Okay, good.
So open meeting laws, meaning when we do meet to discuss it, it's, the community is aware.
No, that if you form a group of some sort, you may be subject to open meeting laws. Simply changing your status here may not remove the requirement that you still are subject to open meeting laws. I think that was something that wasn't fully explored. It sounds like we're thinking we'll just meet private. Well, that really can't happen if you were a board. Even though if you change from a board by the commission, if you were still, the reason you're together is because the commission put you together.
Yeah.
So essentially what I would say is you would dissolve, and then there would be consideration of what that would look like, if anything, moving forward in compliance with open meeting laws.
Right.
So who determines the legality or what would be the rules associated with this open meetings gathering?
Well, and I'll just say this too. I think when we were talking about it, it was my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but there wasn't necessarily a meet in private. The idea was that it was a community, so that the community could give input as well. So like the community would hopefully be aware, like through social media or however they're aware now, that they would be aware that we were going to meet and discuss something, whatever that looked like. So it still would be like the media could still come. It's not like we're trying to, the whole idea was to expand it into a more conversational group where we can actually interact more with the community during our meetings too, right?
And I appreciate that, and I think you can do that under your present status. You have done that with some of the open mics and, engaging a little bit. You can sit around a table and do that, right? There isn't any requirement that you can't do that under your present formation either. It's just, I'm saying it's, if you are meeting and you're discussing with each other, it's got to be in an open meeting status where you're presently at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does that mean we'd still be under quorum regulations and all that goes with that?
Yes.
Like
Being under-
Robert's rules.
Well, again, Robert's rules are part of how you do your formal meetings, but you can do like the brown bags and the informal meetings and the meetings like that. It doesn't have to be this formalized. You could sit down and have a conversation. I can tell you that some of the other committees meet that way, but they're open meetings. You're not discussing anything that's not public, and you're just having a conversation.
Yeah, right.
And you have had that a few times. I can think of listening sessions and things like that, but you could do in an engaging, try to get that information. But I would also say it generally is helpful to know what the topic is so the police are prepared so they can provide more accurate information when they're responding to questions too.
Yeah, right. And we did talk about that as, like, we would still be able to advertise, but we would be able to maybe be out in the community and in public places, maybe schools or churches or whatever, and meeting where, in different neighborhoods where maybe there was an issue going on, right? Like maybe there was a area where something big was happening, kind of like we did over here off 23rd in the Arbors, right? Where we kind of met at the city health thing.
Yeah, I agree. It
City
seems as
Health
though like
Department,
the brown
sorry.
bags meetings are a little bit more informal. Participants, it seems like the dialogue is more engaging compared to what's happening now with this particular committee. And I guess we want to see some of the latitude where the community can open up and discuss without somewhat of a limits, but, be more engaged with when topics and concerns come up. And that's to me, it seems like it was the differences.
Yeah. Right. And we've tried things like listening sessions, but then the listening session was just like it sounds. We were listening. And then that was, I think, a little bit frustrating to the community members that were there because they were still coming and expressing things that they really would like to talk about or have an answer
Yes,
for.
That's true.
So would things like that be able to change under open meeting laws, or will we not really be able to respond to community questions like that?
I don't know how I could answer that. I think it's long as, if it's an open meeting and you feel you can respond and engage and ask questions, you can do that in an open meeting session.
Are there any other more comments?
Yeah, one of the things the chief pointed to was that right now, we're either serving a 3-year term or
4-year.
a 4-year term. And if it were an informal board, that could be changed if people wanted to stay on. And I think the clock's ticking because I think my term is over.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's 3
So-
of you that are like, I signed up for 3 years and it's past that.
Yeah, and so that probably adds a little bit of, let's figure it out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd certainly be interested in being a part, if that can be extended in an informal board, I'd be interested in participating,
Yeah.
so. I can't remember when my term is up. I think it's close.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been aboard
You know,
for 3
Nancy?
years.
I don't. I think it's over.
Oh.
Actually, and I think
Exactly.
the ordinance provides for continue until somebody else is appointed. So, yeah,
So
so I
please
think that is
continue.
the way it provides is you continue until otherwise, that somebody else is appointed. I do think that given that the city commission is going to consider, the continuation of several boards, commissions, things like that, that it's worth continuing the discussion, but I don't know that any decisions could be made here. And then, it'll be kind of up to the city commission. And then it's going to be kind of up to the chief, what it looks like, if anything, going forward to ensure compliance with open meeting laws.
And is it possible, too, that we could expand the number of members on the board? So we wouldn't say if we still have to go under quorum, we wouldn't have a quorum issue?
Yeah, I mean, well, and I think too, if term limits might be different, because I think 3 or 4 years sounds good to me, I think that sounds right, but we have had an issue with getting quorum, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason that we haven't had a meeting this year, part of the reason. And that was the issue last year too, right? And I had mentioned that when I was chair, right, that we had an issue with getting people to be able to
Attendance up, yeah.
come, but life is busy and I get that, so I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm just saying would the structure be the same? Would we be electing people on, are there core members and then other members change? Yeah, that is something that we would have to work out what that looks like, right? Right, but maybe being able to sign up and leave too, because, if you can't make it and you're signed on to make it, and you can't make it month after month after month, then it holds up the whole board,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you'd be able to tap out, so to speak.
Like a delegate type of thing?
Right, maybe. Yeah, something to ponder on and find out the legalities of, Nancy,
Nancy, is this an action item? Do we need to do anything with this other, do we have to vocalize whether or not we think this is a good idea, or where do we go with it?
No, I would say, I think that the sentiment of the board has been, will be conveyed to the city commission for consideration of the continuation of the board pursuant to the ordinance.
Right?
right, yeah, so, yeah, and I guess that's,
The reason I asked though is because I got the sense that, I'll give you a scenario. Let's say the city commission decides that this board is no longer needed. Okay, they've made the decision for us then, right? And then, but if, on the other hand, they say, well, we think a board is a good idea. And so then it would probably fall upon the chief to advocate for rescinding the ordinance. So it could be a couple of different scenarios, I think.
I'm not sure there was a question there. I think you're right. we don't know what will happen going forward, but I think your sentiments have been, are known because of the public nature of them. And the city commission formed the board. They are responsible for the board. And so I think that ordinance would fall on to their responsibility.
Okay.
And I did think that the chief, you know, and he can speak to this, but had mentioned community board and having an understanding of community boards, right, creating them. He seemed like, oh, yeah, this is how we would do it, we could do this, you know. He seemed to be familiar with the difference between the city board and the community board, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
So he probably has some structure ideas, and that could also be something as a board we could look
Maybe
at.
something that we could
Yeah,
do
that
a
we
little
could,
research on
Yep.
and study it and see
and look at what the
Yeah.
community boards do,
what they do. Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Okay.
Especially like if he is familiar with these from being in Wisconsin or something, then we could even look up what impact that had there, you know, and if it was successful or not, and so it would give us a good idea, which, yeah. I think that's a,
So would we make this an action item for the members here to maybe research and try to understand a little bit more about what this Citizens Advisory Board would actually be?
yeah, and I think the chief could speak to that too. Like I said, I think it sounded he was familiar with community boards.
I think we really have to wait and see what happens with the commission,
Yeah, that is true too.
if they keep the board, or if they dissolve the board, and if the chief picks it up. Then we can investigate how other boards and other cities, community boards operate. So I guess we're kind of at a hold pattern state right now.
Well, and just as a board member now, it's like I've heard for months that the city is talking about boards and whether they're going to keep boards and all this stuff, but you know, now they have a date that they're maybe going to be able to talk about that, but I feel like until then, we're still a board, you know, so, you know, to act accordingly, right?
Anything else? If not, the next item is for Officer Mosher to give us a police update.
Yes, we'll kind of jump around a little bit. Like I told Conrad at the beginning, the chief is at a budget meeting, so he'll hopefully join us, but kind of want to jump around here a little bit, but if you go to the update B, which is the update on DT or downtown issues, we can talk about kind of downtown and kind of some of the initiatives that have been put in place. Obviously, our camping ordinance, which we'll talk about as well in letter C. But just with downtown, to the board's knowledge, the community engagement team from the Fargo Police Department, we're back up to 8 full officers. We've been at 4 for quite a while, just due to staffing levels and people leaving the department and not being able to fill those positions. So we are back to full strength with that team. And obviously their efforts are community-wide, but right now we're focusing significantly on kind of the downtown issue, just with a lot of the concerns and different things we've heard from the community, business owners, downtown community partnership. We've been working with them regularly, fielding those complaints. And I would say that we have very good momentum in downtown right now, just from the feedback that we're getting from business owners and citizens, just with some of the disorderly behaviors that were happening downtown. There's been some changes to some ordinances that have helped us with that, with the city commission making consuming alcohol in public an infraction, correct, Nancy? And then urinating in public, making that an infraction.
What were those before?
Well, when I first started here, they were, I think consuming alcohol in public was actually a B misdemeanor, and urinating in public was an infraction. and I forget when they became non-criminal. It was quite a few years ago. But that has really helped our officers working downtown, because obviously if we are now dealing with individuals that maybe don't want to identify themselves, or maybe can't provide a permanent address, or don't want to, cooperate, it gives us the ability to make an arrest if needed. And fortunately, we haven't had to make a bunch of arrests for those offenses, but we have had to in a couple instances. And it helps us with those people that are downtown kind of being disorderly, drinking in public, committing those nuisance type scenarios. It just helps our officers, taking a better approach to encouraging them to not do that behavior, especially on Broadway. So you'll see there's been a huge uptick, and obviously in foot patrols. We got our bicycle program, which was kind of down for a few years, just due to staffing levels again. We got that back up and running. In fact, on the 14th and 28th of this month, I think we are putting, I have to check my numbers again, but it's like 23 or 25 officers through bicycle training. And that'll allow all of our community engagement officers, our school resource officers, when they come out of the schools, obviously they're going to become part of the downtown initiatives. They will all be trained in bicycles, as long as along with our crowd management team. So when we start planning for things like the street fair, parades, things like that, our crowd management team helps with that for the security part of it. We'll be able to implement those bicycles back kind of into our operational planning. Officers have already been downtown on the bicycles, hitting the bike paths. We've used them quite a bit for the camping stuff, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then, kind of like I mentioned, once school is out, I believe the last day of school is like on June 5th or June 8th. We'll have 6 school resource officers that will come downtown with our engagement officers. We kind of strategically place them time-wise, so that
Do they become engagement officers after that? Or,
you could call them. I mean, they'll be part of the community engagement team at that point, but
would that make 12?
it would be 14.
14?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we did with that is the school resource officers will start earlier in the morning, come downtown and, just kind of go through the alleys, parking lots, parking ramps, things like that, make sure things are safe and where they need to be, so that when business owners come to work, they feel safe and they'll see the police officers down there. And then our engagement officers start at 11 a.m. and work till 9 p.m. So we kind of have that extension of coverage throughout the day. So, like I said, a lot of positive comments from the business owners, and we just feel like we got a lot of really good momentum going downtown.
Yeah. How many bicycles are out down on Broadway in that area at any given time?
I mean, we could put out quite a few, but I mean, right now, until we get everybody through training, you might see 3 or 4 officers
Okay.
right now. But hopefully, as we get all those officers trained up, that'll become more of a normal thing, along with the electric trikes that should hopefully be here next week.
What's that?
Electric trikes. So we purchased 4 electric trikes through a company out in California. They're utilized a lot on the West Coast and the southern states. In fact, I just saw 3 of them when I was down in New Orleans. But essentially, they, if you think of like a little stand-on scooter,
Yeah.
it's like that, but it's got a place where you can stand on both legs. They're 72 volts. They'll last all day. So we'll be utilizing those downtown on the bike paths, special events. So, yeah, they're going to be a very, very handy tool for our officers downtown.
Could you speak just a little bit on, there was an article of how the Fargo Police met with downtown owners, kind of helping them with ways to manage nuisance or whatever's happening. It was a really good article, but I'd like to know, like, is that something you guys plan to do again? How was that received, you know?
Sure. Yeah, so that meeting was organized by the Downtown Community Partnership. So obviously, we attended along with harm reduction. And yeah, there were several businesses there, and we just kind of gave like an update, kind of like we did with you guys of our initiatives. And the big thing that we're really pushing to the business owners right now is just to call dispatch. You know, if you get to work and somebody's in your store and you think that they're shoplifting, if they're being disorderly, I mean, even if they're downtown and they see people that are, you know, sleeping on the benches or, you know, maybe, you know, passed out on the sidewalks, or they think they need help, to give us a call. Because what we were finding was we necessarily weren't getting called all the time. And then by that happening, we're not identifying the person. I think through the use of the real-time crime center, an individual that we had contact with that, you know, we weren't necessarily called to, we found out that he was an unregistered sex offender. So obviously that allowed us to make that arrest. So that's really kind of the message that we're pushing to the downtown businesses is don't be afraid to call dispatch, even if it's a non-emergency number. Let us come talk to that person. If they're not committing any crimes, but they need services, obviously we work with harm reduction, we work with Southeast, you know, all those people, and we can hopefully get them in touch with them to get those services. But the big thing we were finding is we just weren't getting called to a lot of these incidents, and then we weren't having contact with that person. So it was kind of our main focus for that meeting. But the feedback that we got back from the DCP was very positive from the business owners. They liked the meeting and liked the information, so I think that helped with that momentum that we talked about earlier.
Right, so that was kind of like the Downtown Community Partnership kind of arranged that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Well, actually, we requested that.
Requested it, yeah, and then
Okay.
they put it together, yes.
nice. So would that be something that you guys would, you know, I guess periodically need to update as businesses update, or to get other businesses on board, or?
Yeah, and I mean, and we're hoping that, you know, just with that meeting, having more officers downtown, you know, the officers stopping into businesses, they'll, you know, form those relationships, you know, to where hopefully we don't have to have like big meetings all the time, but hopefully they'll have that, you know, that relationship where they can, you know, reach out to those officers and we can kind of tackle those problems real time. So, any other questions about downtown? Good. We just hit, we bypassed annual report and went on to downtown issues, so.
Finish with your stuff.
No questions with that. I can kind of jump into camping if you guys want to talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit. So obviously on May 1st, the full ordinance went into effect where, you know, camping on public land became illegal. So we had been out previous to that and with harm reduction and worked with the current campsites to let them know that, hey, come May 1st, you know, this is illegal. You won't be able to be here. You'll be cited. Obviously, your camps will be cleaned up. On May 1st, our officers did go out, and I think they contacted 2 camps. The second one, they got a little tied up because they ended up making, they found a couple people that had warrants. So they made a few arrests, found some drug paraphernalia, but they did issue a couple citations for the actual camping ordinance. And then on May 2nd, with the assistance of Public Works and Fargo City Parks, our officers went back out and they cleaned up, I think it was about 6 current campsites, got those cleaned up. And then it's just kind of become kind of a daily routine for the engagement officers to kind of go out there and just check to make sure that, you know, there's no new campsites showing up. If they are, obviously they're taking enforcement action and then work on getting those campsites cleaned up. And then we are getting, you know, some information from citizens about, you know, campsites that have pushed kind of out of the downtown area. So we're currently tracking those and getting officers out to locate them and obviously notice and take any enforcement action that they deem necessary.
So when those campsites are cleaned up, what happened to the residents of those?
Depends. Again, we'll work with harm reduction in different places to, you know, try to get them services, but the unfortunate part is I think most, if not all, the people that are still currently out there camping. You know, have had contact with harm reduction and staff from the deck since last September, and a lot of them just, you know, don't want the services, and that makes it difficult. So,
Where do we think they went? I mean, there were many, do we have any idea where they go?
I know some,
I mean, they're,
yeah, I don't think we know the exact, where all of them went, no. So, but I think, you know, just last fall and, you know, last winter, just staying on top of it, I think helped. You know, getting the people out of there that wanted the services and just letting people know that, hey, come May 1st,
Yeah.
you know, you can't be here.
any Plan B options for a potential deflection center?
Let you talk about that.
Well, sorry, I was delayed here. I was at a budget meeting downtown, so that's why I might seem a little glossy-eyed. Just a couple things. So on the homeless issue, just to recap, what we've reported at the commission is that when we initially, you know, partnered with Public Health and extended, agreed to ask the commission, and they approved the extension through April 30th. That was in alignment with some of these private entities that were working on acquiring housing for homeless people. And at the end of the month of the last commission meeting, they presented, and unfortunately, their housing that they had anticipated they would have by May 1 was not available. And they indicated that they think they will have it available by June 1. And that was why the warming, well, I think it's the Spring Bridge is what they're calling it now. But what was the warming center and now the Spring Bridge, that was approved to stay open another 30 days until June 1, so that at least at night, those folks had a place to go. I don't know what those numbers look like. I haven't talked to Jeff Fall with Public Health about that to see how many people are utilizing it, since the camping ordinance went into effect and would maybe have that effect. And so we're in kind of in a wait and see position on the housing availability through those private entities. We don't, the city, of course, doesn't really control that. So it's kind of, but that was the original plan. So that put us in this particular position. The deflection center, the funding for that, I don't know for sure how that's panned out yet. Before the legislature closed, there was nothing particular that I'm aware of, but there is some funding in DHS that may at some point be available for that. I think pending city plans. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to speak with the mayor more on that, but I think the original allotment of money that they had anticipated we were going to get, we did not get, at least as a separate award. And we'll just kind of have to work through that process. They just closed at the legislature, so we've been very busy with all of the public safety, sales tax, and budget things that I don't think anyone has had a chance to follow up anymore on that. And so I know that and I think that's probably at square one in terms of a plan. I talked at the chamber the other day on this very issue, and there are no quick wins to this particular problem. The homeless, addicted, and mental health, we're all inextricably connected. And then it will take a large strategic plan effort and probably some kind of public-private partnership for something like that to be successful, because even if the city were to find the means to start something like that, the sustainability of it, obviously, from a city budget perspective, would be problematic. So we're, I think, just waiting to regroup on all of that and see how we can maybe move that ball forward.
So Connor, I just wanted to come back to one thing you asked. So just with the camping ordinance, if officers are sent to a campsite and it is active, you know, those people are being cited for camping, but they still have, per ordinance, they still have 48 hours to clean up that campsite.
Okay.
So even after we have contact with them and take enforcement action, they still have 48 hours to clean it up, and then it's after that that will come with Public Works and Fargo Parks on a coordinated effort to get those camps cleaned up if they're still there.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll kind of just review our 24 annual report here. These were some of the 5 highlights that we identified and we'll cover here. Overall decrease in crime, 6.8% across the city, which is excellent. That doesn't, of course, mean that we still don't have all these issues in some areas of the city related to mental health and addiction and homelessness. And particularly, it's a highlight in the downtown area because of, what downtown means to the city and all that. But we do have those issues citywide, but it's it's much larger, or I guess more identifiable in our downtown corridor. So even though crime is down, the fear of crime is often influences people and where they go and where they don't go, I think. And that's something that we're continuing to work on downtown with all these other partners, as well as made a number of changes to some of our ordinance penalties so that our officers would have some options to deal with some people who are causing issues, disturbances, behavioral type violations, where before we could only write a ticket and simply walk away, not being able to do anything about the behavior, which was very frustrating and disturbing for the public and the business owners downtown, as you would imagine. And so we put some other processes in place, working with the city attorney to change some of that. We're working on some other ordinance changes as well so that our officers have some options when dealing with some of these folks. Implementation of technology was a big piece for us as well. We'll talk about staffing in our academy update, our traffic safety team, and then our officer department wellness program. So that's kind of look at the stats across the board. That total, again, decreases 6.8%. So that's really outstanding. We're happy to see that. And you can even see, actually, going back to 22, a downward trend for the past couple of years in all the categories except the society group, which is your drugs and weapons kind of thing. So we like to see that. That's good. But we always want to continue working on that and trying to make that better. These are some individual crime breakdowns. Again, shoplifting, not a surprise. That is the highest volume crime. Shoplifting and theft are the highest volume, highest numbers of crimes that are reported in our city, fueled by a lot of things, some of which we just discussed. But that's one of the most prevalent upticks in crime last year to this year, 23 to 24. The homicide numbers are up, but our average over a 6-year period is 5. So really 2023 was a low year comparatively. So we're in alignment from that perspective. Obviously, we'd like to have no homicides. And the only thing positive about that is that we've cleared them all by arrest. So that's about as good as you can get when something like that happens. The rape numbers had a big uptick from 23, but very similar to the homicide numbers. In 22, we had 150 reported rapes, and in 21, we had about 120 some. So not off the charts looking at it over a period of several years. One thing I do want to point out is our increase in clearance rate on rapes, and that was an area that we started concentrating on back in 2023, making sure that all the sexual assault kits were sent to the lab and working with them to get those results. But we really took a focus in our investigations division on sexual assault. They even created a separate team for sexual assault and put some people in that area. We do have some difficulties in North Dakota state law that really make it hard for prosecutors to charge sexual assault or rape. It's in our statute, it's called gross sexual imposition, but it's sexual assault. And some of the wording of that statute makes it difficult from a prosecution perspective. So I think we've talked about this before. We would recommend a review of that statute really to other states and best practice in current law. I think that would help some of those victims and the ability to prosecute more of those cases. We also added our victim services specialist in 2024, has had a real tremendous impact, and I think you had a presentation from Jordan sometime previously talking about all the work that she's doing with victims. Sexual assault and domestic violence are one of those areas that she has connectivity with victims, and we never had that outreach before, so I think that's great. Robbery pretty flat. I mean, it's up number-wise, 5 robberies, about the same. Our violent crime, all the egg assault and simple assault categories are down from last year. That's good. You'll see the breakout below. So that's a subset of the main table numbers above. So of the 500, or of the 428 egg assaults in 24, 124 of them were domestic violence related. And I think, and those numbers are down as well, which is good. I think the other piece of that is the clearance rate. I mean, we all know who the suspects are in these cases, but I think that just points out the nuances of domestic violence and how difficult it is sometimes to see those cases through on the prosecution side. Sometimes we have victims who no longer want to be victims. There's a lot of financial and family and all type of other relational concerns that sometimes upend those abilities to prosecute, but you would think that those would be higher. The other thing that we're looking at into 2025 is implementing a lethality assessment plan, program rather, and that is a national program that evaluates, it's a couple questions survey for domestic violence victims in terms of what type of contact and incidents they've had with their assailant, and it kind of categorizes their risk for lethality. So we're working on that currently, allocating some funding to do that. We've researched it already. I put it in place when I was chief in Beloit. We had it in Milwaukee, so it's familiar. And it's a good program, and it helps also in terms of prosecution decisions, I think, because it informs the prosecutor a little bit more about what the potential concerns are with the victim and maybe the more significant cases for them to look at. So we're hoping to get that in place this year or early next year and continue to move the table on some of the domestic violence clearances and accountability. Shots fired calls really took a nice dip over the past couple of years. Between 23 and 24, not much variance. Those are instances in which someone fires a gun at a house, at a car, in the air, at someone but doesn't hit them. So shots fired, no one's hit, no one's shot, but someone's fired a weapon. And we've tracked those very consistently since 2021. That's also part of the ballistic information that we load into the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, and have through that identified and matched some of the ballistic evidence up to other crimes, not just in Fargo, but in other cities. So we do that with all of our ballistic evidence, and that's technology that we brought in late 23, early 24, working with the ATF, and that's continues to be very successful as well. Continuing with technology, our real-time crime center, which we have incrementally been building out and up with whatever available staffing we can put together to do that, and the implementation of our flock camera system across the city. This has been a huge game changer for us in terms of our ability to not only prevent, because we've got people when calls go out that can monitor cameras as long as that's staffed, and they can provide that on-the-ground intel to the officers responding, and they also can provide overwatch during some of our large events like Street Fair. Last year's Street Fair, for example, they identified 80 to 100 incidents, things that they saw were occurring, that something was going to happen. They were able to radio boots on the ground and direct them in there and prevent some of those things from occurring, or identify people who were wanted or created other law violations. And the other thing this really does for us, especially when we have officers in the real-time crime center, because of our limitations under North Dakota Century Code, our officers cannot arrest for almost all misdemeanors that don't occur in our presence, with the exception of drunk driving, domestic violence, protection orders, and huffing. So if it's not one of those four, and a lot of these simple assaults are all of those categories, right? And we're not there to witness the incident, we can't make an arrest, even if the offender is right there and the victim's right there. What we have to do per statute is essentially we'll detain the person, find out who they are, interview them, of course, and the victim, and then refer that person for charges to the state's attorney's office, which can take quite some time for them to get to that case and review it and decide if they're going to issue a charge, and then they issue a summons and notice the person, and it goes through the court process. But that doesn't always necessarily solve the problem that's right in front of everyone when you've got especially assaults and things of that nature. drug complaints that we get from our downtown business owners, again, are things that they see but we didn't see and we can't take action on. So what the other big benefit to this real-time crime center is we've been able to actually make many arrests because we have an officer in the real-time crime center watching that crime occur. They radio direct to the troops on the ground and they can direct them right there and an arrest can be made. So, and you might have seen some of this on our social media posts that our comms team has pushed out. They do a great job of grabbing those not only great work, but informational pieces so that the public understands the benefit of this tool and how it's being utilized. These are only public-facing cameras. There is no expectation of privacy in the public. Anyone can put a camera anywhere in the public, and so there's no privacy concerns or Fourth Amendment concerns or anything of that nature. So it's being used appropriately, and it's having a huge impact. We've also found people who are missing. Sometimes we get older folks who have senility or other issues and are driving around and no one can find them, but we have their license plate. We can enter that into the flock camera system. When they pass a camera, we get an immediate alert, just like if it was a stolen vehicle or a wanted vehicle. We get that alert and we know where they just passed, and we've located some people as a result of that. So a lot of really big public safety benefits from the technology.
Chief, can you address the question on staffing of your real-time crime center? Do you feel like it's adequate or is still?
Well, our
needing
staffing for
more?
the department is not adequate, and that's our budget ask, and that's our public safety sales tax piece. So, if you've looked online and kind of scrolled through our strategic plan, you'll see that for some time we've been trying to get to a ratio of officer to population of 1.6 per thousand. We're currently at 1.4 officers per thousand. The national average and the state average is 2 per thousand. So 1.4 is way behind. 1.6 is just where we're trying to get to help alleviate the workload of all of our personnel and make sure that we've got enough people to do all the things that we're doing. We've got a very large, complex organization here with many different areas of operation. But to get to the 1.6, we need about 28 more sworn positions, which is quite expensive. So we're working through the budget process now and the public safety sales tax to try and chunk that down in maybe measured strokes to get us to that level over time. But at this juncture, that we're in that sausage making process right now. So that and it's not just, remember when an organization grows or you need it to grow, you just can't add every boot on the ground and have no supervision, have no middle management, have no command. And so from top to bottom, all of our people are doing extraordinary work, but they're also doing a lot of load, a lot of extra work, because there aren't enough people at each level to alleviate that load. And so that's the big focus of our strategic plan. And as we're working to chunk that down into manageable bites from the budget process, how we will look to add those chunks in meaningful ways, right? So you got to have cops, you have to have supervisors, you got to have middle management, and how does that work within each budget cycle? So that's where we're at now, and in the real-time crime center is the same thing now. We have civilianized, and we've got civilian analysts who do a lot of that intelligence analysis work. But when it comes to the cameras, they can't help us in terms of making an arrest. It only could be a sworn officer viewing that misdemeanor that would allow us to swoop in and make that arrest. And I think that's a big thing for our community and our public safety, because many of these instances, making an arrest and getting that person out of there and holding them immediately accountable has also a deterrent factor to other future activity, right? If, everyone gets referred and in 3 months they might get charged or maybe not, they're going to continue to be involved in that activity most likely. So we think this is very positive and just a huge ton of benefits to this type of technology.
Chief, has the shortage of officers kind of driven the technology? Is that?
Well, so the technology doesn't mean we need less officers, because we still need those people to do all that work on the ground, and we don't have enough to do that. So as it is, so what we're doing, I think, is outstanding. But again, when you look at the numbers of people in our department, and especially the new generation of folks who maybe, like some of us, don't want to work 1 million hours like we did when we were coming up in an organization and thought nothing of it. They are very attuned to work-life balance, which is actually pretty good. And so you have to have sufficient amount of personnel to alleviate workload and provide for that, or what you end up with is a retention problem down the road. And we've seen this, I mean, even in Moorhead's facing some significant staffing gaps, 20-some positions, that's like a third of their authorized strength. That's a lot, right? They've had people leave there to take lower paying jobs at Clay County, but work less hours. And so that's exactly what we want to avoid. And that's what a lot of our folks are, like you look at Lieutenant Moser here, he's like a jack of all trades. He's doing like 50 things simultaneously all the time. And a lot of our people, many of them in all these different roles are doing that. And so we have to alleviate that and grow the organization appropriately.
Does the shortage drive more overtime?
Yeah, well, sure, it does drives overtime, yeah. And our overtime, as we filled our positions, our overtime has gone down, but it's not going to go away. And the other piece of it is, there's things that we can't currently do, right? There's just investigations that we simply cannot get to. So we have to prioritize that, and a lot of cases are then made inactive if we don't have someone to work on them, so we can prioritize our violent crime, our burglaries, and things of that nature. So, and that's the other piece, that if we, appropriate staffing would provide a little more volume for some of those investigations to be worked on as well. So, that's just reality of, we do what we can with what we have. This offers us a great many more options in terms of intervening and either preventing or immediately being able to arrest for crime that occurs, which in turn will prevent other crime. So I think that's good. That's a good preventative measure. But we still need cops up there to be able to do that, right? And so we need cops on the ground to take the action and make the arrest. And we need detectives, investigators to do all of that kind of work. So it's not directly tied to staffing. Staffing is its own issue as it stands. And that's why, we're trying to expand our hours here. We're hoping in the near future to be able to cover 16 hours a day. 7 days a week is the goal. We're trying to put that together. And what we've also been using to help piece it together is some of our injured officers. We average 10 to 15 people off the grid on a continual basis, either family leave, military, or injury leave. And so we've been able to capitalize on that as well, again, to try and be as efficient as possible. We did create online reporting a few years ago to help with those calls for service that the cops couldn't otherwise get to. But there's still a volume out there that, we like to be a little more involved with. So,
So the roadblock in getting from 1.4 to 1.6, what would be the top 3 issues that are keeping you?
well, it's just money. It's finance, it's approval by the commission, and it's budget, right? And so, each one of those positions comes with a cost to the city budget. And so so fortunately, we've got the public safety sales tax to work with. That's good, and we'll see how that plays out.
I guess what I was getting at is when the city commission knows you're at 1.4, and they know that the target's 1.6 and really should be 2, what do they say when you ask?
Well, I think that's, we've made these presentations to the commission. In fact, when we did our strategic plan that the commission approved in January of '23, I believe, we had even the experts that came in and evaluated our facilities. Staffing goes along with facilities. And so that was all provided to them. Now, that may have changed a couple of, maybe one seat changed since then. This information is not unknown, but I think from their perspective, they're trying to navigate. And we're one department of many in the city, and the city budget is a certain amount of money. And so they're trying to work through that to provide, I think, for all of the departments. And, they have to make decisions, but in essence, we've,
So the sales tax,
well,
what did
that
that
doesn't
do?
take effect until, no, that just came into play, right? So that's what we're working through right now.
and how will that be a
That's going to help us start to get where we need to get to, yes. So that's going to be a good step in the right direction. But there's also some legislative caps that, prevent cities from raising taxes over a certain percentage, right? So there'll be there's that issue that they think I imagine they have to deal with as well. So it's not like an easy 1, 2, 3, we've got the sales tax and now we'll be able to all get everything that we want. We have to kind of work as a team to figure that out. But I think that we're going to be able to make some good progress in this next budget cycle. we'll know as it moves along. All right, so our staffing and academy, kind of to your point, so we have 2 academies again in 2024, and we've been running 2 academies every year since 2022, actually. So our staffing, we've got 1 vacancy currently. Normally, we'd be having an academy right now, like we've been doing the past 3 years, but we have no vacancies to fill, so I can't put anyone in an academy and hire them because we don't have any more authorized strength. Hopefully that will change going into 2026 with this public safety sales tax in addition of some new FTE personnel. But we're as good as we can be right now, and again, trying to get to that 1.6 level. The traffic safety team has been doing an outstanding job. They hit the bricks last September and have had and continue to have a tremendous effect on traffic safety in the city. They have written, as you can see here, 2,000 total tickets, 1,600 citations, 300 warnings. That was just in the last 4 months of 2024. Going into 2025, we post our numbers online. I'm not sure what you got the current ones on there. So if you go online, you'll see our traffic citations and all of that under the crime stats as well. We also post our quarterly crime now. So that first quarter for 2025 is posted, and I think that's in the slide deck here as well. But they've been knocking it out of the park. The other good thing is that we were successful in the legislature. House Bill 1229 was signed by the governor. That's one that we've been trying to get through the last 2 sessions that holds the owner of the vehicle that flees from our officers accountable in terms of the tool. What it does is allow us to 80% of these cars that flee from our traffic stops, they're not stolen. We've got their license plate. It's on video, but we don't know who the driver is. And in order for us to refer a charge for fleeing, we need to know who the driver is. So the owner liability piece is, hey, if you're liable for whoever's driving your car. So if they fled a traffic stop, our officers would follow up with that owner. I'm sure they would ask them, hey, who was driving your car during this time? It fled a traffic stop. And they could decide to, let us know who that was and provide that information so that we could follow up with an investigation and refer that for charges. Or they could decide to say they don't want to tell us anything, and they would receive a $100 non-criminal traffic type citation. Second offense is $500. But I think for most people, that's going to help us a lot and maybe identify for some people who weren't aware that, let's say, sometimes young people are borrowing the car and they don't know what they're doing with it. But I think that also brings with it a greater deterrent factor. These fleeing vehicles, and in particular the motorcycles, have been extremely dangerous. We had the guy a few weeks ago on the motorcycle. Our officers tried to stop him for speeding, and he was doing wheelies. He took off and blew through red lights, and there was another squad down the road on 52nd that was running radar, and when he blew by the squad going through the red light, he was clocked at 143 miles an hour. Shortly thereafter, he crashed into an occupied vehicle on the other side of I-29 and miraculously survived. And there was minor injuries to the people in the car, but this is reckless behavior. It's a disregard for the lives of others, and it's really just completely unacceptable. But there is a contingent out there, especially with these motorcycles, who feel they can do whatever they want. Just yesterday, we had another similar incident, a little after 4 in the afternoon, where a motorcyclist was going at a high rate of speed and collided with an RV, and that individual lost his life. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that is dangerous to the public. Motorcycles present a unique challenge to us because of the speeds that they can get to. But if we can get the license plate, now this law doesn't go into effect until August 1st, but at that time it'll be helpful. But the motorcycles, there's some kind of a different culture there, and it's very reckless. So we're continuing to utilize technology, our partners, and HPs, and their plane whenever possible to put out concentrated efforts. In fact, this afternoon I know they were out trying to kind of lasso in a group of motorcycle riders who were driving fast and recklessly, but we certainly can't pursue them at that high of a speed, and we don't pursue them just for traffic violations. So every and all additional means like this that we can use to track those people down and hold them accountable is good.
I did, the one, was it last week or a couple weeks ago, that you guys had called in some extra technology for that, or we're talking about maybe drone technology to kind of help with the fleeing vehicles? I read something.
Yeah, we don't really have the drone capacity for that right now. That's something in addition that we're working on or looking at from a technology perspective.
Wasn't this pulling in some extra resource to help the Fargo police?
Well, there really isn't another, I mean, we use the plane from the HP, and we've got our cameras that are out there so we can track movement and stuff like that. If we're looking for someone who is fleeing, yeah, we can utilize that. But it's really placing them in a position where they're not driving their motorcycle and then kind of moving in from there is a lot of what we're attempting to do. But a lot of these folks are just really, just completely reckless, and it's totally unacceptable, and it really just defies logic because, you know, as we've seen from these last two incidents, they're more likely to not survive a crash than anyone, but certainly their disregard for everyone else's safety at that speed, because it's also very likely they're going to run into something or someone, as they've done. And so in fact, we're certainly open to members of the public providing information on some of these individuals who are doing that to give us some more information to work with so that we can try and upend some of that. And then our wellness initiative, this has been a continuing effort over the past several years, and it's really blossomed in 2024. We have got our wellness coordinator in place. She's been tremendous. The feedback from our personnel has been outstanding in terms of her engagement and what she's able to bring to the table. She's also got some clinical licensing that enables her to do mental health check-ins for our folks. So we have annual mental health check-ins. But if they decide to go to Mary, that saves us the cost of going to the paid psychologist that we would otherwise go to for that function. So there's some return on investment there as well. But she's really brought a lot to the table, and we've established an overall combined peer support wellness program and team in the department. And we are on the verge of establishing a separate wellness unit, which Mary would belong to. We'd have a supervisor in there to manage all of the programming, but also all of our injured and people that are gone on leave so that they can properly be reintroduced and reintegrated to street work. So if you think about, you know, working in a fast-paced environment like this and getting an injury and being out for a year or 6 months, you just can't come right back into the saddle, especially depending on your level of experience. And we have a lot of new young cops, so if they're out for a while, you know, they're missing a lot of reps. And so we brought a program from Edmonton, Canada, a reintegration program, and inserted it into what we're doing. And that's been received very well by all of our folks also. And then, you know, military deployment, same thing. You go on a military deployment, especially active duty, you've been working under the rules of war for a while, and that's what your brain and your reactions are. So it's really important that we reintegrate them into civilian policing from a war platform, right, which is much different. And so that's proven over time, and there's information out on these reintegration programs that shows the benefit to the folks in reintegrating them back in and preventing, you know, other harm to them mentally or to others as well. So that's continuing to grow. We've expanded our chaplains program as well. We're excited about this, and we're going to continue to grow that and kind of touching into the family piece as well to help support our folks. Of course, it was the Badges of Unity, now the Fargo Police Foundation, on this wellness program that allowed us to go out last May, a year from now, and honor Jake Wallin, which also was a very somber moment, but also a very replenishing event for almost all of the folks that went out there, just in terms of also seeing the national support for the police and, you know, the honor that's bestowed upon all of these people, and I think really appreciating the work that they do, and just having that opportunity to do that, I think gave a lot of folks some closure on that. So that was a very good experience as well. That's just a view of our organizational chart, just kind of referencing back to, this is a complex, complicated organization with many things in play at all times, 24/7. We are not in place waiting for a call. We're out in the community 24/7, 365 days a year. We have, 3 divisions of a whole bunch of different units and teams that are out doing a variety of things that combine for that organizational success and public safety. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And going back to how you grow the organization, you have to grow it in a reasoned, logical manner. You just can't throw a bunch of people in one area and go, okay, we're done. Because now all of a sudden we have span of control issues. And so, just take, for example, our shift commander lieutenants. We really don't need to have as many as we need. And so when they're not working, sergeants have to fill in, which means sergeants out on the street. But right now, that's the best we can do with the staff that we have. So again, that's one of several issues that we hope to solve with appropriate growth and FTE additions. And that completes my report, and happy to take any additional questions. Oh, I got this too if you want. That's the first quarter report. Any questions on the annual?
No.
Okay. So this you'll see also posted quarterly. This is the work of our crime analysts. They do a tremendous job on this as well. And this is, so what you'll see every quarter is a by beat. So we've got 5 beats in the city, and they're outlined in the upper corner. A by beat report of crime. And then, how we look compared to January through March of 2024. So it's a 3-month comparison to the first 3 months of 24. When we get the second one, it'll be, I think it's going to be a 6-month then, right? Or will it still be by quarter? Okay, to be determined, but either way, it will be that time frame, and I think it will grow incrementally. But you can see this is overall for the city. The only crime that's up in the first quarter of this year is motor vehicle theft, which has also been along with shoplifting and theft, a pretty high volume crime, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of local vehicle thefts. One of the main things we always try to remind people is not to leave your car running with the keys in it, right? That's probably the number one way cars get stolen. And it happens not just in the winter, but in the summer, because people want to have their AC on too. And so that's one thing that I think if we could get people to stop doing and invest in a remote starter, which is probably a couple $100, we would see a reduction in motor vehicle theft that would be significant. But we also got motor vehicle theft as a national issue, in which we got, especially for high-end vehicles, where they target cities, areas, et cetera, specific vehicles, and get them either into Mexico or out of the U.S. through ports of entry. And there's a whole kind of national motor vehicle theft piece to that as well. So that's citywide for the first quarter. You see the calls for service there. That's up 7%. Crime is down, calls are up. This is beat 1, which is north, going all the way up by the airport. Slight increase in egg assaults, and again, motor vehicle theft is big. That increase is based on vehicles stolen from the airport that actually ended up in Mexico. So that case went to the FBI because of the federal jurisdiction. But as I alluded to, there's a national motor vehicle thing out there also that is a piece of that. B2 is our downtown area. And again, as last year and again the first quarter, the only crime up there is motor vehicle theft. All the other crimes are down compared to the first quarter last year. B3, across the board, everything's down in the first quarter. B4 has got a mixture. Here you see motor vehicle theft and simple assault. I think one thing that's consistent is the calls are up, I think, in every beat area. And then beat 5, we got a little increase in rape, and that's about it in 5. But you'll see this on a regular basis now too, that we've got this developed, and we've got some of the technology that we needed to help our analysts pull this and organize it in a better fashion. So we'll be pushing that out. At some point, we'll probably have a more public-facing crime mapping system, but we're implementing a number of things. We've got some things in our current budget request that will also help expand the capacity to do this kind of analysis and push it out.
What area is beat 5? Where is?
Southwest, that's southwest side of the city.
Okay.
So if you look, I think I-20,
I can't see that far.
I-29 is that eastern border,
Okay.
and then you can see 94 across the top, so it's whole southwest side of the city and a little bit to the north there where Shields would be in that area north of the interstate. And then that slides into, that slides into,
What was
Beat
beat
one.
3?
yeah. Well, Beat 3 is east of 29, so what that slides into is this other part of Beat 1, I believe, because 3 is in the east also. Yeah, so Beat 1, if you see where Beat 1 kind of comes in there, they mesh. Actually, if we go back to this one, it might look better. Let's try that. You can kind of see how they come together there. So the blue is 5, 1 is green, 3 borders on the east there. All right, now I'm happy to take any additional questions.
One quick question. I didn't see where you had anything about illicit drugs in terms of the crime associated with those incidents.
That's in this category of crimes against society. And so the fentanyl and all that kind of information has not changed in any significant fashion. Last I looked, we were ahead in overdoses from a year ago. Like a year ago, there was a slight decrease. We had been going up. And then last year, you might have even seen some articles that, well, it looks like nationally the overdose numbers are going down, which again, 1 year's worth of data doesn't mean a trend. And so, we were seeing continual rates of overdoses and fatalities. So that continues. I don't have those numbers right in my head at the moment, but that has not improved. So we're hoping it will because there's been a much different approach at the border where a lot of those things were coming in. We still do get some stuff, Postal Service and other means they get into the U.S., but that should help us a bit as we move forward. We'll see what the data tells us. But we've still got folks who are heavily involved in trafficking, narcotics, people, all that kind of stuff going on. All right. Okay, thank you.
Well, are there any other issues that the board would like to bring up or discuss? If there are not, then I call this meeting to adjourn.